Thank you very much for inviting me here, and thanks for your patience. It has been a long day, I suppose. So before starting my talk, I would like to remind you what I'm going to talk about. And actually, a lot of stuff that I wanted to mention was discussed here. And thanks to the previous speaker, both to Anne and to Yoel. So here we go. As a rule, all that is left by prehistoric humans are remains of material culture, and through more than 2 million years, those are comprised predominantly chipped stone artifacts, and it was very appropriate of the late Glyn Isaac to describe the endeavours to learn about prehistoric human society as squeezing blood from stone, because that's all we have for quite a while, actually. Reversed engineering, experimental archaeology, refitting, etc., do supply information as regards prehistoric mental capacities. Still, there is more that we can observe and learn from the prehistoric archaeological data. Namely, it does provide us with insights of domains pertaining to human social behavior, human relationship, emotions, and belief. So you can see that actually I'm going to talk a little bit about the social issues, the little we do know about. It is kind of assumed that social complexity is a result of a linear evolutionary process marking a civilized society. Yet it appears that the prehistoric record bears evidence for different forms of social and behavioral complexity starting early in human evolution. Keeping viable population sizes, which is an important thing for survival, group identity and group cohesion, never mind other social behaviors, demanded the existence of social institutions and a complex social protocol which can be traced far back in the archaeological record. Since we didn't compare notes, I suppose what you will see here is a little bit, reminds you of the slides you saw that Yoel showed you. I do hope, in spite of being the last lecture after a long day, that I will manage to convince you that this is indeed the case observed throughout human evolution at large. Combined with the obvious fact, of course, that most of our daily behavior stems from highly conscious, somebody mentioned that earlier on about the consciousness, that we have a highly conscious, monitored, and complex social learning based on social codes and rules of the game. Now, our beginnings, and you see I didn't bring the picture, but I brought a list. The beginnings were very humble indeed. Our remote direct ancestors were just one of several biped primates, a novel phenomenon at the time in primate evolution. By now, we are the only one that survived of all that long list. Most of them belong to the Australopithecine genus, living in different parts of South, East, and to a lesser extent, West Africa, as different, distinct species between 7 and 1 million years ago. So far, the first remains assigned to the human genus that most of the people agree about, it's something that should be mentioned, is a fragment of a fossil lower jaw recovered in the Afar region of Ethiopia and dated to 2.8, 2.75 million years ago. What can we say about the behavioral complexity of these remote ancestors? I'll try to illustrate what's there very cautiously, bearing in mind the words of Maurice Bloch, and here I echo what Yoel said. We know little, and we have to be very cautious about it. And I loved and laughed when I saw what Maurice Bloch wrote. He was referring mostly, though, to social anthropologist. Still, it's quite accurately describes how we should behave, I suppose. And I defer to the highly, I acknowledge that everything I say is nothing but an epiphenomenon of my present cultural position and time, and that this inevitably leads me to essentialize a particular cultural position and then mercilessly impose it on defenseless people. In that case, the defenseless people are our ancestors, of course. So we can say that our remote ancestors most probably diverged in their behavior from the range of behaviors of their closest primate relatives as they were leaving Africa, at least from 1.8 million years onward, occupying and exploiting different habitats nearly all over the old world. We find traces of them in North Africa and Eurasia, reaching temperate Europe around 1.3 million years ago. And I want to show you just one spectacular find from the side of the Manisi, which is dated 1.8 million years ago, and it echoes what Yoel responded to a question raised here. This is a skull of a woman, an old woman by those standards, 40, 45, and you can see that she lost her denture a long time ago, judging by the healing or the size and morphology of the jaws, and she still survived, which means that somebody, whether it was kin or non-kin, took care of her and sustained her, even though she couldn't chew food by herself. And so clearly, the adjustment to those various environments was not merely through the production of material means to cope with the different local environments in order to survive and thrive. Group size and group cooperation mattered. And since the technology was still not optimal to exploit to the maximum the carrying capacity of each region, it meant that the nuclear group of people living together on a daily basis was small, yet still had to be connected and tied in with a larger population to be part of a viable genetic pool, a viable mating group, which is considered to comprise between 250 up to 500 individuals. A mechanism that promotes such an arrangement are seasonal aggregations of smaller groups coalescing for a short period of time on one spot, performing activities jointly, mostly of a ritualistic ceremonial nature. Such a behavior is predicted by archaeological data to exist all through the time of human ancestors predating the appearance of our own species, Homo sapiens sapiens, some 300,000 years ago, according to some, and younger, according to others. And since time is short, I am indeed moving on to the time our own species came to rule Earth, to the times of the last glacial in Western Europe, approximately 45,000 years ago. I'm rounding out the numbers. And I would like to show you the most obvious and spectacular evidence for the complexity of human behavior at that time. The very existence and the nature of the Franco-Cantabrian rock art corpus is believed to stem from the notion that it fulfilled the need of local groups for social group identity, with identity signatures designated for the smaller group and the larger population. And I'll just show you a series of pictures. I mean, I'm doing really a tremendous injustice. I suppose each and every one of you saw more and maybe even better illustrations. So here is Altamira. That's the first cave that was discovered. That's the main hall. It's in Spain. And the whole ceiling is covered by more than 100 paintings, mostly of bulls, but there are other paintings as well. And as you can see, it was quite low, and it's quite obvious that it was painted, or at least most of it was painted while the painter was lying on his back. The size of the hole now is totally artificial. I think 1902, King Alfonso XII came to visit the cave, and it was beneath his dignity to heel or to crouch in order to see it. So most of the sediment was excavated in the cave, as you can see here. Sorry. And removed. That was the original prehistoric top. And it was all removed so the king would enter it in state. And this is another example of a cave. I just want to show you the scale. And all of those walls and crevices are painted and carved. Once upon a time, you could actually enter the cave, and there was a small choo-choo train that was going all along the walls and looking at those paintings. Nowadays, of course, it is forbidden for the public to enter, since we brought in a lot of bacteria and some other stuff and nearly ruined the cave. So there are now replicas. I think there is by now, it's the 4th version of the replica. It's Lascaux 4. And once again, you can see the scale. That's 1 meter. And you can see the intensity of the paintings and the elaboration of it. This is simply my favorite in the cave. So by now, for sure, and I'm talking about 43,000 years ago onward, by now there are clear indications for symbolism, abstract signs appearing repeatedly in distant locations. And once, sorry about that. That's exactly what I had in mind when I was citing Maurice Bloch, because we can, or usually a story is told about this guy that got gored by the bison before he killed him, and who knows what the rhinoceros was doing there. And we are telling a story, but actually we are imposing what we know or understand from a picture like that. That's the most spectacular cave uncovered so far. Every year there is a new cave, but the discoveries are modest. This is the Gros de Chauvet. It was discovered mid-90s. Once again, please notice the scale, 10 meters here. All of this is full with carving and pictures, just to give a human scale to it. I suppose most of you have seen those pictures. Still, I couldn't resist it. And that's something which is really quite innovative and interesting. We know this kind of technique. That's a painting of a bison from another cave, Marsulas, that was discovered years ago. And it was considered as a technique of dabbing wedges of material or vegetables and in wet paint, and then painting with this. And then in Chauvet, when this was discovered, it was assumed that it's the same. Now with more modern means, it was discovered that actually every dot here represents a hand, and the color was painted on here, and that's how the whole painting was done. So I think it's quite amazing and means something about those people. Talking about symbols, that's an inventory of kind of various symbols that are appearing repeatedly in tens, if not hundreds, of caves. And I will just bring one illustration. This, for the sake of the moment, ignore this and look at this symbol. It's a painting from a cave by the name of Peshmerl. And here it is, the same symbol once again in another cave, Cognac, which is located quite a distance from the first one. So apparently there was a whole symbolic repertoire that those people were sharing. And it's not only abstract symbols, you can see also conventions of how to portray the human image, mostly females. Oh. Here you have actually two, I brought two slides of walls covered by abstract. Both are from Spain, and I just picked them. I could have chosen others as well. This is El Castillo, and this is Leonil, and you can see the repetition of all kinds of symbols, dots, and markings, which unfortunately we don't have the key for understanding them. And that's what I was starting to say earlier, the figurines. We have figurines from West Europe through Central Europe up to Siberia, and they are all depicted in the same way. Like this one, the Venus from Willendorf, that's how they are called, all those figurines, Venuses. She derives from a site not far away from Vienna, Austria, Austrisch, and you can see a lot of investment went into either her headgear or some kind of elaborate hairdo, but not any facial feature to begin with. And then we move to another two places, actually, two other places. This one derives from Kostienki, Ukraine. And actually, there is this line separating between the head and the face, but no facial features. The same is true for another figurine from Dolny Vestonici, the Czech Republic, Gros de Rideau, France. I think this is the last one of the female figurines, Grimaldi. Between, it depends whom you're asking where it comes from, because when it was excavated, it was still Italy, now it's France. The same style, if I may say so, or technique, the same convention. And I couldn't resist the temptation to show you this guy. We are used to this combination of human and animals much later. I mean, the common knowledge is about similar figurines from Egypt or the Fertile Crescent. This guy is 34,000 years old, and is made on a mammoth ivory. And I think this speaks for itself. There is also There is also a clear rise in the presence of non-functional, high cost in terms of expertise and time investment artifacts of bone and antler. And I'll make it quick because I think I'm taking up too much time anyway. And we don't know the function of those. They are made on antlers. And this guy is in a smaller version here, and you can see the two birds perching on his stool, actually, looking, I suppose, for seeds. So here they are observing things that looks very kind of modern observation to us. Endeavours such as this invested in the production of those rock tools, rock art paintings, engravings, and elaborate tools, non-mundane, not usable in the sense we think about food procurement. Endeavours such like this actually demanded communal cooperation, sparing from mundane activities and supporting artisans while they were engaged in artistic performance. Moreover, lavish burials such as this one, Sungir, this is a site in Russia, not far away from Moscow, I mean by Russian standards. And it's a site that produced, I think, 10 burials, but those three are the most spectacular, and you can see that those two are two kids, actually, 12 and 14 years old. They were, you can see how many beads there are, mammoth ivory beads. People who try to imitate and learn how long it takes to produce just one bead. I mean, the most adroit of them, it took them between half an hour to 45 minutes. So you can imagine what it means to have all those numbers here. And I'm mentioning also the mammoth ivory spears, and they were much, much more than those. So what does it mean? It means that they had to share a communal interest and lavish communal goods, either on privileged persons like here, or in some way by communal consent, because this is a huge investment, which has nothing to do with food or daily life. And moving on, this is our, as I was saying, these are communal goods, or maybe indication of social stratification, with some having more and others having less, never mind by which criteria, inherited or given, yet accepted by the community. And all of these demanded social skills, non-kin social interactions, and the conscious creation of social mechanisms to enable and promote those engagements by fair and sometimes unfair means. So I assume, and all I can say, I can cite Daniel Dor, who say that language is a social communication technology collectively designed for the instruction of imagination, and that we evolved for lying and because of lying just as much as we evolved for and because of honest communication, if we are talking about the use or misuse of language. And once again, I would like to jump to the next stage where one can observe a social change of unprecedented magnitude, the change from mobile hunter-gatherers to sedentary agriculturalists and pastoralists. After nearly 3 million years of keeping extractive economy, how humans changed their economic mode to productive economy. And this change impacted every possible aspect of human existence, not least social behavior. And once again, one can observe the tremendous plasticity of human behavior which enabled the worldwide agricultural revolution. Now, we have to remember that under Paleolithic conditions, there were only us and others, because all people with whom one had any kind of interaction belonged by default to the same reproductive network and were known, even if not of the same basic social unit. Through time, one can observe a rise in group size and a reduction in territory size, both linked to improved means of production and associated demographic changes. A larger group could serve as a viable genetic pool nearly on its own without the need to meet on a regular basis members of other groups. Encounters with individuals that did not belong to the same group were less crucial for survival and thus not pre-planned or repetitive. Those individuals were not remembered from previous encounters or introduced by other members of the group. They became strangers. And the notion of strangers and their introduction into the realm of social behavior of humans is a crucial point, and I think it wasn't investigated enough, and I think it can be added to the ingredients of human complexity. I'll make it a little bit shorter. I'm monitoring myself, yeah? Landscape, natural and artificial, is more than environment and living within a landscape. Being in the world is entangled in social and processes and is not, I think I have it here so it will be easier, and not reducible to environmental adaptation. There should be an understanding that people and their social relationships are at the core of worldly engagement. Environmental knowledge itself could even be considered as a form of social currency exchanged between individuals and groups, bonding them in various forms of social relationships. And I would like just briefly to show you what happened much earlier than the Egyptian or the Fertile Crescent civilizations at the very beginning or on the verge of the agricultural revolution and the tremendous changes which could and indeed did introduce this kind of enterprises. Just to show you very shortly, this is a site from Jarf al-Ahmar, Syria. It's dated to around 12,000 years, and that's when we started being sedentary, which is a very crucial point in life when people are actually settling down and mingling with non-kin and much and distant relatives or no relatives at all. And this is a skeleton of a young girl. She's 15, 16. Her head was removed, and that's part of a custom that we know in the Near East for quite a while, starting with 15,000 years ago. And what I wanted to show you is that she didn't die, she didn't die peacefully, as you can see here at her hand. So there is a long story there, and I'll skip this one. I'll just show you Göbekli Tepe, which is, as you can see, 11,000 years old. It comprises, now they excavated from A until J enclosures, but there are more to be excavated, and there are up to 20 pillars. This is one of the enclosures. The pillars are arranged at the circumference of each enclosure, and there are two central pillars in each of them. The periphery pillars are something like 3.5 meters high. The central ones are 5.5 meters, and they are lavishly decorated. So actually, we'll finish with those. This is enclosure D. These are the two central pillars. That's, let's say, a dramatic picture of the same. That's how it looked when it was just at half of it being excavated here. And this is how it looks at the very end. Enclosure D, pillar 18. It's actually a figure, stylized figure, human figure. You can see the hand here. That's the end of the hand. There is all kinds of symbols here. That's a loincloth, and it's stuck in this pedestal with those curved ducks. I think the pictures speak for themselves, and I do hope that I have convinced you that after this tour de force, that our mostly and predominantly conscious behavior, as well as social complexity, are not just the preordained result of an evolutionary process or the benchmark of a civilized society. Clearly, the demand for behavioral plasticity, social capacities, and social interactions are a major driving force for human cognitive evolution, no less so than the nitty-gritty needs of mere survival. And it is summed up in short: man does not live by bread alone. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Wow, everyone is going. We still have a discussion, but here is the first question.
I have a question about that Grimaldi Venus. And the question is that I know that cave a little bit, and it is usually presented as being Neanderthal cave. Is that correct? Or did Neanderthal produce that kind of Venus?
No. I'm a zealous defender of the Neanderthals, and I think they were able to do more than some assumed, but no. This is clearly belongs to the realm of modern humans. There are a lot of examples. They all come from this kind of context, of Upper Paleolithic context. The only thing that happens now is that years ago, the dating, the C14 dating, gave us much later dates than we get now. Everything that is dated now is older than it was previously. For example, Altamira, the first cave, at the beginning, it was dated to something, the oldest, 22,000. Now it's around 40,000. So, I mean, the floor sinks down, and then things go, and then it becomes very mixed, because people are using the old data to check the new data and vice versa. But no, definitely, that kind of figurines, no. It doesn't belong to the Neanderthal, let's say, world.